All right, so we now need to make a really gigantic gear shift into thinking about life in a corporation. I hope you'll come with me. If I ask you to think about the corporate environment and describe it, what kind of words would come to mind? Maybe stressful, bureaucratic, political, boring.
Awesome job.
And probably one of the first things that doesn't leap to the front of your mind is a place for humanity to thrive. And, you know, it's a real shame, and it breaks my heart to see so many people hating their jobs. And one of the biggest reasons that people hate their jobs is because they feel like their true, real self is not welcome in the workplace. That fun, interesting, happy person that you are on the weekends is somehow not good enough or not suitable for the work environment. And, you know, that personality lobotomy every Monday morning to turn into your work-appropriate self is really, really painful. Doesn't have to be that way. The idea that I want to share with you today is that embracing humanity in the workplace is not only better for people, it's better for the business.
You can jump out there faster.
And I will describe to you my journey as a human, creating what is somewhat unlikely corporate success in my own career. Because I grew up in a very small, very rural farm town in North Jersey, and ultimately became a Silicon Valley CEO. This was not a well-marked path, and I really had to find my way. And there were many points along the way where I felt tremendous pressure to conform to the environment. And people would tell me, you know, Patty, corporations are nasty, competitive places. So if you want to succeed, you need to be that way too. And I could never do it. It felt like I was sacrificing my identity, but more importantly, it felt like it was just a bad strategy. So let me start by sharing a corporate scene that we can all probably relate to. There's a manager, a leader in a room with their team, and they say, here's the strategy, here's what we need to do, make it so, go do it. And everybody nods their head. Now, nodding heads is not actually a good sign that people are going to go do the thing that you talked about. People nod their heads for all kinds of reasons. You know, I bet I'll get out of this meeting faster if I nod my head. Or, I actually wasn't listening, but everybody else is nodding their head. Or, you know, I have a real concern about this, but my ideas are usually shot down, so it's just easier. Or, I totally disagree with this, but this will be much easier to sabotage outside of this meeting. So what's happening here is that this leader has created a very hierarchical, very closed conversation that leaves no room for the engagement of people, let alone for their humanity. The reason that many leaders do this is because they don't want to hear it, right? If they open up for a real human conversation, they might hear conflict, doubt, disagreement, dissent. And that kind of leader takes those things as a challenge to their authority. Now, tragically, there have been people who have died on operating tables and planes that have crashed because the leader was unwilling to step outside the hierarchy and have a human conversation with the people who knew what was actually going on. So how do we replay this scene with humanity? Well, the first thing, the beautiful thing about humanity is that it is completely independent of hierarchy. And if you want to bring humanity in, it's 3 simple steps. Step number 1 is you yourself need to be willing to step out of the hierarchy and show up as a real person. Step number 2 is this human conversation, and it only takes 4 words. Those words are, what do you think? And then the third step is that you have to be genuinely interested in listening to the answer. And so let me replay this scene, how this works with my teams. So get in that same room as the leader. I say, here's the strategy. Here's what we need to go do. But then I step outside of the hierarchy and I say, but I don't have all the answers. What do you think? What do we collectively think? What about this scares us? What do we think the hard part is going to be? Is there anything we feel like we're not ready for? What do you think? Now, of course, if you open up this human conversation, you're bound to get some conflict. You're bound to get some doubts and disagreements. But seriously, wouldn't you rather know? Right? In that conflict is the humanity. In that conflict, people are telling you their truth, and they are giving you the information that you need to actually go forward and get the thing done, instead of just being satisfied with the head nodding and moving forward without that information for a stall or a crash. I learned this lesson initially when I started my first big executive job with multiple levels of management underneath me. And frankly, I was terrified. That was like a big, new, terrifying job. And I talked to a mentor, and I said, I'm not sure I know what to do. And he gave me some life-changing advice. And he said, Patty, talk to everyone, and you'll know what to do. And so without that advice, I probably would have been stuck in the hierarchy, and I would have only talked to my direct reports. But instead, I scheduled 100 one-on-one meetings for my first 2 weeks on the job. And in every single one of those meetings, I stepped outside the hierarchy, and I had a human-to-human conversation, and I said, what do you think? I'm new here. What do you need me to know? What do you think is important? What do you think is working and not working? What do we need to do differently? What do you think? And after that, I realized that the most critical, most important information in an organization is hidden. It's invisible. And the only way to uncover that information is by having authentic conversations, independent of hierarchy, with the people that know what's going on. And the only way to have those authentic conversations is to show up yourself as a real person and ask, what do you think, and care about the answer, so people feel safe to tell you the truth. And I tell you, at the end of those 100 one-on-one meetings, I felt like I had a superpower. Not only did I know what to do, but I had 100 people who were motivated to help me go do it because I had respected their humanity. And I was looking at my peers who weren't talking to everybody, who weren't doing this, who were trying to act like big shots, and they were just shooting in the dark. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, well, Patty, in those examples, you were in charge, so you could do whatever you want. That's not the hard part. The hard part is when your management is torturing you. And so let me share with you how I used this same humanity-based approach when I was getting unreasonable pressure from my management. This normally came about when I would present a business plan. And the board, the executives, they would say, that's not good enough. And we need a bigger revenue number. By the end of the year, you need to hit this bigger revenue number. And in my bones, I knew that was impossible. And so I said to them, that is not possible. And at that point, they said, well, if you can't do it, we'll just put someone in the role who can. And so at this point, I had a choice to make. I could cave into the pressure, sign up for the number, and then get fired for not delivering it. Or I could stick with the truth, which was, this is impossible, and I could get fired. Or I could try this humanity thing. And maybe it's a result of my small town upbringing. But I didn't have any corporate ninja power political moves to bring to play in moments like this. Let's face it, I only had the one move. And that was show up as a human, show up as a real person, and have an honest conversation. And so I would say to them, I understand why you need that number. And I agree, I bet you can get any number of people who can tell you that they will deliver that number. But I seriously doubt that they can, because I have really studied this. But please tell me, what do you think? What do you think that I'm missing here? What do you think is the different thing that's going to happen if you put another person in this job? What do you think? And I can tell you, I have never lost a job over this. And in fact, pretty much that exact conversation is what got me 2 of the biggest promotions in my career. Because if you are willing to show up as a real person and tap into this invisible, hidden information about what's really going on, it creates a tremendous amount of confidence and credibility. And I can remember there was a specific moment in my career where I decided that I was going to show up at work as my true, authentic self, and I was going to let go of all the fear of the things that I'm not good enough. That fear at work of I'm not good enough drains a lot of energy. And once I decided to show up as myself and say that's good enough, that's when my career took its biggest leap forward. And the other interesting thing about that is about 6 months after that, I was having lunch with my mom and my sister, and my mom said to me, you know, Patty, it seems really weird, but it seems like you actually like your job now. And for me, being willing to just be a real person, be my true self, and stick to it was how I navigated that path from small town to Silicon Valley CEO. So what I'd like to leave you with is that you don't have to conform if you don't want to. And in fact, if you are willing to show up as your real self and respect the humanity of others, you will actually be at your most powerful and most credible. And while we can all think of some narcissistic, egomaniac assholes that have had tremendous success in business, you don't have to be that way if you don't want to. What do you think?